Hi everyone, welcome back to It's All Light. I'm your host, Natalie Baugh. Thanks for tuning in every week. Today's guest is Dallin Dickerson.
Hey, Natalie, excited to be here.
So, Dallin is just a well of knowledge. From the moment I met him, I was like, wait, I want to learn more about this. I want to learn more about this. And today we get to learn more about all the things I want to learn more about, as well as what Dallin lights up about. But first, Dallin, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, for sure. I'm originally from Northern California, and then I moved out to Utah after my mission. I served an LDS mission in Brazil, and I moved out here to work for a wilderness therapy program. So, not to be in a wilderness therapy, but to work for one. So that's working with troubled youth with behavioral, drug, or alcohol addictions. And then I was only planning on doing that for about 6 months. I ended up doing it for almost another 2 years, just because being out there and being in that service kind of mindset, I just absolutely loved it. And so I also fell in love with Utah of all places. I hated Utah as a kid because I was from a bunch of trees and lots of green, and the desert just did not speak to my soul.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had a lot of beautiful, sacred moments in the desert. And yeah, so now I ended up going to BYU, and then got into real estate, and then planted some roots, bought a house in Provo of all places, the last place I thought I would live, but I absolutely just love it. I just love how close the mountains are and just all that Utah has to offer.
Yeah, Utah's pretty magical. It's funny, growing up in Utah, I never thought of it like super deserty, but anytime I would travel East Coast or West Coast and come back to
Yeah.
Utah, I'd be like, oh, for sure, it's a desert.
No,
But
yeah, it definitely is. But like, it's a totally different kind of desert.
yeah,
But I
totally.
try to tell people it's ugly and terrible and don't move here because it's getting super crowded.
So
But
crowded.
then again, like my whole career is around people moving to Utah. So
Mm,
it kind of, it's a
yeah.
dual edged sword.
Yeah, the mountains are unbeatable though. I love living so close to the
No,
mountains. Well,
that's true.
fun. It's fun to get to know you a little bit more. And
Oh, thank
now
you.
we'll broadly ask you, what do you light up about?
Ooh, I light up about progression.
Hmm.
Anything that has to do with growth, and a lot of that is tied to relationships as well. But
Yeah.
I personally believe that we're on this earth to grow and to progress. It's kind of funny where growing up, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and growing up, none of my friends were LDS, and they always thought it was, interesting and counter gospel that we believe that we could become like God.
Hmm.
And to me, I think it's so ironic though how all of us though we're always about trying to progress, whether that's looking for the perfect job or looking for the perfect body. I used to work in the health and fitness industry, and I mean everybody's trying to have the body of a Greek god or whatever it may be, and it's in our DNA to want to progress. It's in our DNA to strive after perfection, and so
I like that.
yeah. So I love this idea of how can I be growing and learning.
Isn't that what like Aristotle and Socrates kind of intended
Mm,
way back then anyways, right? Or like
yeah.
Michelangelo and the drawing of the man and the perfect dimensions
Hmm.
and all that stuff. I mean, the David. That's where my mind goes, but I like that.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a, to me, it's progression is life.
I love that. On your list, you also mentioned like relationships and serving others, and I mean, separate from that being physically active. Is there a connection between those two?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think at ultimately the end of the day, our relationships are one of the most key and crucial things in our lives, and
Mm-hmm.
ultimately what we take with us into the next life. Um,
Hmm.
and I just love learning about people's stories. Like everyone has a story to share. Everyone has
Yeah.
something that they've been through, and the more that you learn about people's story and their humanity, I just feel like the more you can connect. And the more you connect, the more you can love and serve other people. And I've had, and I'm sure you've had this as well, but humbling experiences in your life where maybe you judge someone. And like, for example, I had a client. So I used to coach CrossFit when I went to BYU, and I had this guy that would come to my class, and he was always late, and I would show him the movement, and it just like would go in one ear and out the other, and he just could not for the life of him, like, I don't know how he functioned in life, but he was super uncoordinated. And anyway, like, he kept coming to the gym, and after about a year, he let me know that he needed to cancel his membership. And deep down inside, I was like, okay, cool, like, finally, because this guy's been such a pain to deal with. And just kind of in passing, I was like, well, hey, like, why are you canceling? And he said, well, honestly, he's like, I'm addicted to pain pills. And he's like, a lot of the times when I come to the gym, like, I've been high. He's like, but the community here and the support and the people, it's like, that's been such a blessing to me. And just in that moment, he just went from being one of my least favorite clients to coach to now my favorite, because when he was at the gym, whether he was doing drugs or he wasn't, like, he was connecting with people. And to this day, you know, he's someone that I think the world of. And I think a lot of us, I think it was Thoreau said, we all lead quiet lives of desperation. And I think that's really the case. Like, we all struggle with our own different demons.
No, totally. And it's amazing how our brains, like, look at other people and forget that, you know? Like, as I'm hearing you say that, my heart, like, feels that. It's like, yes, like, my own desperations, and then maybe we know into the lives of other people that isn't so forward, and those we know, like you said, it changes our perspective. But like, for literally, sure, probably anyone listening to this podcast probably has something that immediately comes to mind of, I love that you said the desperation of our hearts. Like, it's powerful. Wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So what helps you, like you said, like your perspective shifted after you learned more about this client? In like other instances, how do you get yourself to that point so you judge less and can immediately connect?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes from just my own life and my own personal struggles. When I was a kid, I moved around a lot, and during one of the moves, I was in 8th grade, and it was, you know, 8th grade is already an awkward time of life, right, for everybody. And anyway, during that time, like, I was bullied, and I ended up, like, struggling with depression. And that was like a really hard thing for me. And I didn't understand, like, why. I just always felt, my dad called it this black rain cloud. And anyway, that was kind of the start of my journey, though, where I got into kind of my mindset and moving my body. And so honestly, I had a bad group of friends. I wasn't really doing the right things in life. And I just prayed. I was like, God, like, I need something new. And anyways, I was introduced to rock climbing. And that, just being out in nature and moving my body and wanting to push myself, like, it was something that helped me overcome my depression. And then my dad, he gave me a book, As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. And he made me do like book reports on it. So I had to like read a chapter and then write about my thoughts about it. But it was truly from reading that book and getting into climbing that I learned about the power of your mind, and also how motion creates emotion, where if you're sitting at home and you're not doing anything about it, it's like, yeah, like, you're going to feel sad. You're going to feel depressed. But if you just get up and start moving, like, you'll start feeling different.
Motion creates emotion. I love that. What else do you feel like helped you come out of depression? I mean, when you're in 8th grade, like you said, it's different than, I think, as an adult. Like, if people struggle with depression, like, it just hits you at different times and feels different probably too.
Yeah, there was another quote by Helen Keller, and I think it was Helen Keller, and it said, the best way to cheer yourself up is to try to cheer somebody else up.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wait, no, that wasn't Helen Keller. I have no idea who that was.
But I'll put it in the show
notes.
Yeah.
But to me, like, I come from a family of service. Like my dad to this day, as a kid, whenever we're driving down the road, he would always pull over and he's always helping people change their tire. I can tell you about times that he terrified my mom bringing home homeless people over to our house for dinner. And my dad just loved and cared about people, and he taught by example. And, whenever someone at church was like, hey, we need volunteers, we need people to put up chairs, my dad was always, always, always the first one to do that. And our family motto is work hard, play hard. And that's something that as a kid, I didn't really understand, but as I've gotten older, that I've come to find the joy in working hard and playing hard and just, serving other people. You truly do lose yourself in the service of other people, and you find so much joy.
Tell me more about losing yourself. Like, why is that important?
I think it's about perspective. I think you're able to see, I think a lot of times we think about, woe is me, like my life is hard. But once we're able to get out of our bubble and focus on other people, I think it really helps us get more clarity of what matters most.
And then therefore you can apply that to your life.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of the irony of service is it's a selfless act, but also it's kind of selfish because, you're helping someone, but you also reap the benefits of, gosh, like I feel good about myself, which is not in a prideful sense, but in like, you can't, like, when I do good, I feel good. Like it's that simple.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like sometimes I feel guilty for like wanting my motives to be pure, like, oh, all I want to do is to serve and not think about myself when in reality I know it's going to benefit me. But I think that's just how it is. Like, I think that's why service is so important, is because of that effect it has on you and helping you become who you want to be. So I love that. I love that thought. I love that quote. You also shared another quote, this actual scripture, Genesis 2:15. Do you have it memorized, or do you want me to read it?
No, go ahead. Let's hear it.
The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it.
Yeah. Okay. Did we talk about this when we got together?
A little bit, I think so. Tell me more.
Okay. So a little bit of the backstory behind this is about, so I'm the youngest in my family. So I've got 4 siblings. I've got 20 nieces and nephews. Fun. And like amazing parents. They're on a mission right now in Australia. And anyway, just but I'm the only one. I'm the favorite uncle. I'm the funkle of the family. But ultimately, like, I love, smaller versions of myself, running throughout the house. And growing up LDS, there's such an emphasis on marriage and dating and relationships. And honestly, for a lot of years, I just felt like I was failing in life. And I felt like, gosh, like the very first commandment that God gave to Adam and Eve was multiply and replenish the earth, have joy in your posterity. And I'm like, man, I am failing hard at that.
Just because you weren't married and didn't have kids?
I wasn't married.
At whatever age, yeah.
Yeah, and also it's kind of like, what is the purpose for sometimes, and this is going to go down a whole nother rabbit hole if you want, but like sometimes it's like, what's the purpose? Like, you can get very comfortable in your life, making a certain amount of money, but ultimately one day you're going to be providing for more, taking care of more. And so this idea of where God placed Adam in the garden. So someone shared this with me once and it totally changed my perspective. But the first commandment that God actually gave to a man wasn't multiply and replenish the earth. The first commandment that God gave to Adam was, hey, here's a garden, take care of it. And so the word in Hebrew is shamar, and it means to keep and to protect and to watch over. And so ultimately, all of us, and I'm just going to talk about just men in general, but like men, we've been given a garden. And whether that's like your dorm room when you first start out, or your car, or like, the job that you have, like that's your garden, like that's your space. And your job is to take care of all the things that come into that space, whatever it may be, or whoever that may be, to where like when they're in your space, they feel like they can fulfill the measure of their creation.
Wow.
They feel like this is a safe space. Like I can grow here. And so the cool part for me, what I love so much about that scripture is like, you know, my job is in life is, even if I'm not in a relationship or if I'm not married or I don't have a family, like my house, my neighborhood, like the people that I interact with, like they should all be better, safer, and provided more for, just because of like what God's told me to do. Is like, hey Dallin, like you're in charge of this garden, like watch over it and the people that come into it.
So that shifted your perspective of failure into it just looks different.
Yeah, for sure.
And you're successful in areas of your life that will get you to where you want to go, and that still looks like success every step of the way.
Yeah.
Cool.
A big part of it too is, and this is gonna sound really like prideful, but like I want to have such an amazing garden that like when the day comes that like my wife enters into the garden, I just hand her the keys. I'm like, this is for you. This is what I've built for you.
Oh,
This is
that's
what I've
beautiful.
created. And to me,
Wow.
that's what motivates me, is that idea of, you know, one day, because everything can change in a moment. Like literally anything could change just like that, and for good or for bad. And I don't want to sit around looking back at my life and like, oh man, I wasted so much time when I had all this free time or this availability. And I really want to maximize the gifts that I've been given, and to just, for me to improve, but also to improve the lives of others around me.
What do you think can help people? And this is a selfish question because I'm like, what are ways I can identify these gardens to take care of? Like, if you're feeling like a failure because you're not married or because of whatever thing in your mind, like, what are ways you can start to identify those other ways, those other areas that you can start to take care of?
Sure. So, you know, the parable of the talents, right? Super similar. Okay. So, for example, you have responsibilities, you have certain gardens, you have certain talents that God's given you to be a steward over. So right now it may be your room, you know, that's part of your garden. It may be your bank account is part of your garden. Your body is part of your garden. Like all these things are part of what's been given to you. And it's about, are you being a wise steward with what God's given you?
Cool. So it's a matter of just, I guess, figuring out what those are to you. And like you said, they all kind of, I mean, sometimes some are higher, some are lower, and
totally,
and they fluctuate. But ultimately, you get to a point where hopefully it's easier to let someone else's come in with them, because then there's so much more when you put two lives together in this kind of mentality, right? You do it as a partnership, and I just think that's beautiful. Oh, I love that.
Well, have you ever like met someone and then like after meeting them, you're like, oh my gosh, like I am living far below my potential? Like, have you ever ran into people like that?
Kinda. Potential's a hard one for me to like wrap my head around sometimes, but
why do you say that?
just because sometimes I feel like I don't know how to push myself. Because I never know like what I should be trying to achieve, or running fast enough type of thing, or far enough. But I don't know. I want to hear more of your thoughts, and maybe that'll help me connect the dots.
Okay, well, more of my thoughts on what?
Just, I don't know, just these areas of your life, like how you know you're being successful, I guess. How do you know you're taking care of your garden well?
Yeah. So like another thing that kind of gives me a little bit of peace is recognizing the reality of times and seasons. You know, like there's certain times and seasons in our life where I think it's totally fine to focus more so on health or more so on your finances, because I know lots of people that are extremely wealthy that make a ton of money, but at the same time, because of they've neglected their health, they're not able to enjoy their quality of life. And so for me, it's constantly this balance between all these different things, and it's really easy for us to be like, well, shoot, like I'm struggling in this aspect of my life, like whether it's my finances or whether it's my physical, like I'm not running enough or lifting enough or whatever it may be. But just giving yourself grace. Be like, hey, look, you know what? This is a time and a season where I'm going to work on this. And there's a Maxwell quote that just I've got burned into my brain, and it's called, and he says about having divine dissonance, but not, or divine discontent, but not the devil's dissonance. And so it's that sense of being like, I'm feeling like I'm falling short of my potential, but not to the point where I beat myself up. And I'm like, man, I'm a loser, I'm failing. Does that make sense?
Wow, yeah. That is something I think I need to frequently remember, because sometimes, it's just amazing how, like you said, how powerful our brains are. So it's like what we tell ourselves about ourselves really shows through our actions. Or like if there's a day I'm not feeling motivated or I'm not as productive and my mind is ADHD wild, and I don't feel like I'm getting anything done, like I have to accept some of those days happen, but then like feel excited to work on it to get better. So I guess that's a really beautiful way of looking at meeting your potential. I want to revisit that question you asked, and this kind of goes back to relationships. You said, have you ever met someone that just makes you want to live higher and in higher potential? And I want to ask you that question. Who comes to mind and why?
Ooh, that's a great question. Yes, there are definitely people that I feel God had placed in my life that inspire me, and it's been all throughout my life. And it's actually something that's personal to me, where I believe in mentorship a lot, and I believe that you can learn a lot from other people, and everyone has a light about them, and you can, like, you have a light about you, like, and people recognize that, and people see that, and to me, I'm always intrigued by what it is. I mean, even your podcast, it's all light. I mean, it's about people sharing what makes them light up. And to me, when I find people that I just feel like they have that glow or that spark, I'm like, hey, like, what is it in your life? And so, like, I actually love asking people to just be like, hey, let me take you to lunch, and asking them, like, hey, what are some of your favorite books, or what are some of the things that you feel like you do in your life? But like, there have been times in my life where I've been in like dark places, and to be totally honest, a lot of the times they're women where God has put them in my life, where they're just, I mean, like a being of light, where like I truly was just like, wow, like to be worthy of a woman like that, like, and to be inspired by that. And I think there is something beautifully divine about how on this earth we're here to inspire each other and to push each other, and to help each other grow.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Now I'm thinking about, like, we did go to lunch and you asked me like what excites your heart, or something along those lines. So I kind of want to pose that question to anyone listening to this podcast. Just like sit for a second and be like, what gets your heart excited? And it's similar to like, what do you light up about? Because I feel like when you talk about something you love or someone you love, like it excites your heart. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think living wholeheartedly is what life is all about. Like, that's like, I feel the most disconnect in my life whenever I feel like I'm living more in my head. And so for me, finding ways to connect to my heart, whether that's through conversation or being out in nature or serving or helping other people, I feel like the more I slow down and just pause and try to sit with God. I actually read something this morning that really just resonated with me, and it was how God's love is unconditional, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we know that God's forgiveness, God's grace, like feeling his love, his love is unconditional. But intimacy with God, like that connection that we crave, like that is conditional. Like, where we want to feel close to God,
Mm-hmm.
and like and it's just like any relationship. The more time that you put into that, the closer you're gonna feel to that person. And I've loved how, as I've gotten older, like when I was first taught about God was like God, and it was like hellfire, damnation, and it was Dallin, like you got to like keep the commandments, or like it's gonna be really bad. And then I learned about Heavenly Father, and I was like, okay, like this makes a little bit more sense. Like I can kind of wrap my head around this. And then Heavenly Father became Father to me, and then he became Dad. And then ultimately, like the relationship that I have with God is more like Abba, where I truly feel this like fathering by God in my life, and this connection and this relationship that like I feel is it's a really personal thing, but that's the beauty. Everyone's relationship with God is completely personal and intimate.
I love that. Wow. I love all these Hebrew words that you've shared with us today. It gets my heart excited.
It's not on purpose.
Oh, it's one of those things that I'm like, I was thinking about this the other day, like, how do I become like a scriptorian, right? And I'm like, the best thing I can do is just go on LDS.org and type in like institute manuals, and I feel like I'm doing something, but I'm like, how do the scriptorians and people who write all these books, I'm reading the Infinite Atonement right now, and I'm like, how do they dive and feast into these studies and learn? And anyways, it's just cool to hear you kind of piece together some of these things I've been thinking about. So thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, I want to take the next 5 minutes and kind of just ask you your thoughts on dating, because this is something like I might just share some of these resources you've shared with me just to help people, because I know this is a lot of my audiences, it's on their minds. So
sure.
I'm going to read some of these resources you've sent me as you gather a few thoughts you want to share. So there's a few podcasts that he recommends. One is Jared Halverson. This is kind of about dating, but it's Don't Let a Good Faith Crisis Go to Waste. And then there's a podcast called Heart of Dating. And I think you shared some quotes with me too, but there's some good quotes, but I'll maybe post those on my stories. But real quick, your spiel on helpful tips for dating, or just things that have been on your mind.
Yeah, for sure.
I know, heavy question.
I honestly, like, I love dating because I think it's relationships. I love getting to know people. Like, I truly, like, okay, so this is total doctrine of Dallin, all right? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think, but it's, I personally believe there's a beautiful like combination between men and women, like masculine and feminine roles. Like I just love. I will die on the hill of the Family Proclamation. It is a wonderful, inspired document. And I do believe that a man's role is to provide, protect, and preside. And so kind of going into that is I feel like there's this expectation that we took for granted growing up, where we were just told, hey, do all these things, get your Eagle Scout, go on a mission, go to school, get married, have kids, And the question is like, or what I tell people is like, look, I don't remember singing this verse in primary about, being at this stage in my life and not having a family, right? Like having a career. And I feel like in dating, men and women, we complement each other, and women inspire men in a way that men can't inspire other men, and vice versa. Like women inspire men in a way that, other women can't. And in the world today, I feel like a lot of guys have just become complacent. A lot of guys have just become passive, and they're not pursuing and they're not protecting the women in their lives, and because of that, like, women don't feel as safe, because ultimately when you're in a relationship, like, you want to be like, am I safe? Like, will this person take care of me? Will this person provide for me? And so what I feel has happened is men, like, they graduated from school, they landed a job, they're comfortable, they're providing for their needs, and they just get too comfortable and they stop progressing. And a lot of the women in my life, it's amazing how they graduate, they don't get married, and then they're off to getting their master's degree, they're off to getting their law degree. They're just crushing it in life. And so where there's this, I feel like there's this imbalance where a lot of the women in life that I know have kind of risen up to here, and the men are kind of still stalling back here. And at least a lot of the conversations that I have with, like, my female friends are just like, gosh, like, it's hard to find guys that are actually moving in life. They're actually progressing. And see? Oh, go ahead.
No, I was cutting you off. Sorry.
Oh, no. Yeah. And so that's like, yeah, I just feel when it comes to dating, it's like we should inspire each other, and we should grow and bring the best out of each other. But for women, it's like, find someone who does inspire you. Find someone who makes you feel safe, who makes you feel like you want to be the best version of yourself.
I like that. Well, as you were talking about just like you growing up and what you've been taught to go and do, like for me too, like I never thought I would have to have a career. Like I always knew I was going to go get my education, and I knew I'd go to college, but I always just was like, I'm going to be a wife and a mother. I hadn't really, which this is on me, I hadn't really opened my mind to like what a career looked like and where I wanted my life to go at this stage, not being married, not having kids. And so it's been super interesting for me in like the sense of dating and relationships to figure out my role in a sense, because like you said, like I'm a firm believer of that family proclamation as well. So it's like, okay, what's my role? And like something I hope to help with like Relief Society stuff too is like helping us live our role now, even though we're not wives and mothers yet. There's still so many ways we can do this, and just any interaction with males in our lives, like that inspire or the nurture and whatever our role is can be paired with being a career woman. Like in our jobs, we can do so much of this nurturing and taking care of ourselves and those around us and family members. And I don't know, I was feeling more of like I need to step up too, like it's just a matter of when two people are both trying to live that level and then they can inspire each other, then it's magical, right?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, it's synergy. It's 2 + 2 = 8. It's this powerful combination.
Right. What's his name? Big speaker. Not Tony Hawk. Tony
Robbins.
Tony Robbins, thank you. he spoke at the Silicon Slopes Tech Summit, and I wasn't there, but there's an episode my friend goes through all the talks from that first day, and he was talking about just having, like, if you take 3 couples and one has low energy, one has medium energy, and one has high energy, who's the most successful just in their marriage, in their life? And it's the people with 2 people with high energy. It doesn't have to be about the same things, but just 2 people who have that high energy toward life and enjoying life and making the most out of things and getting through hard times. It's like high energy wins, and that carries you. So that's just something I keep in mind. And that looks different for most people. It doesn't mean you have to be a high energy bouncing off the wall person, but that you're motivated. And I think you've talked about a lot of those principles with like taking care of your garden and stewardship. And it's really cool to see how they can all come together. So with all of these things we've talked about, to not make it overwhelming, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, start small. I mean, really, it is truly by small and simple things. Like it's if you wake up every day just 1% better. I know it's so cliche, but it's stacking up the wins. It's as simple as making your bed one day and or going out for that walk and doing those things. Like I'm a huge believer in journaling. That's something where I love to just sit down and just kind of put down my thoughts, but it also just express and ponder more. Like someone actually, one thing that helped me, people talk about being making gratitude lists, right?
Yeah.
So I used to sit there and like make these long lists in my head and like, okay, like I'm grateful for my eyebrows. I'm grateful for my like, I'm trying to like think of like weird things, because I'm trying to just come up with this list. But what I've done now is rather than come up with long lists of what I'm grateful for, I just think about like one thing that happened like today. I'm like, gosh, what's the one thing today that I'm grateful for? And I just sit in that
like a moment
for
or
like
something.
a moment. Yeah,
I like
I
that.
sit in that moment for like 2 or 3 minutes.
Mm.
And I'm like, God, like that was great. Like that was fun. Like I love that. Like, and I'm grateful that you put that there.
That's cool. There's power, like we did a happiness challenge at work like a year ago, and there's power in like as you record in your journal or think back through a happy moment, your brain gets to relive some of those happy chemicals, and so it just like makes it that much more powerful. You can still have a high off of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that. Thank you. So many good
Yeah.
thoughts. So, an uplifting takeaway from today's episode, just something, this could be something we talked about, something that you just want to like make sure people understand if they listen to this episode, or just something that your takeaway is in your heart for today.
Yeah. Honestly, I hope people are watching this because there's a light about you.
Thank you.
Just from the way that you share yourself, the energy that you have, and just like I feel like I'm a better person from just the short conversations that I've had with you. And like I'm just grateful for that. And I'm grateful for that's the gift that we have in this life, that we can share our light with other people. And I just think the more that we magnify the gifts that we've been given, the more that we truly can uplift those around us.
Wow, that was so beautiful, and thank you. I the same about you. Like I'm so excited to have people listen to this episode, to push this out, because there's just so many things that we talked about that you shared that are things that I feel like we forget all too often.
For sure.
And they're things that people talk about all the time all around us, but worded in certain ways can sometimes hit different people. So I appreciate your time.
Pleasure's all mine.
And I'll leave your Instagram on my Instagram so people can find you, and I might post some of these other great book quotes you've sent, as well as any other fun resources if you guys need a house. Now you know a guy. But anyways, everybody have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you next week. See you later.